Hey there, I hope you're doing well. My name is Adam and today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy Reddit stories, consider liking, subscribing, and maybe hitting that notification bell too. Let's get started with today's first story. Much love, everyone. Today's first story comes from my husband cheated with my cousin and she's pregnant. Family demands divorce. I was brought up in a very strict religious community that followed conservative beliefs. In this community, having an abortion was completely unacceptable and the idea of getting a divorce was basically taboo. Nobody did it. Cheating on your partner was viewed as a major sin. This background sets the stage for the turmoil I faced later. It all started when I found a surprising note left by my ex-husband on our kitchen counter. It turned out he had been having an affair, and not just with anyone. My cousin. This was shocking enough, but there was more to the story I didn't know yet. I tried to reach out to him by texting, hoping we could talk this over, but instead of hearing back from him, my phone rang, and it was my dad on the other end. My dad didn't beat around the bush. He told me straight up that my cousin was pregnant. What was even more shocking was that my family wasn't upset. Instead, they were looking forward to the baby. This reaction was a hard pill to swallow given our community's views on morality. The next blow came swiftly. My dad instructed me coldly to pack up my things and leave our home. This demand left me reeling. I was so stunned by the news and his harsh tone that I attempted to ask for some explanation or some reassurance. However, my dad wasn't having any of it. He just told me to leave. Overwhelmed and not fully processing everything, I obeyed. Leaving the house was a surreal moment. I felt shattered, like my entire world had crumbled. I didn't have many options, so I ended up living in my car. Despite these harsh circumstances, I had a job at a 24-hour gym, which was a small blessing. This job allowed me to maintain some normalcy. I could go in, shower, and work my shifts. This routine was both a necessity and a distraction. Over the next 2 weeks living out of my car, not a single person from my life reached out, not my parents, not my ex. No one. It was as if I had disappeared from their lives as easily as turning off a switch. Then, unexpectedly, during a regular work shift, my dad appeared. He wasn't there to reconcile or offer comfort. Instead, he had the divorce papers with him and demanded that I sign them right then and there. According to him, my ex needed everything to provide for the upcoming baby. There was no empathy from my dad, just cold insistence. That was the last straw for me. After he left, I didn't just go back to work like nothing happened. Instead, I took a crucial step. I went out, found an attorney, and handed him the papers I had signed under duress. I was determined to fight back, to find some way to deal with the betrayal and the heartbreak through legal means, hoping for some justice in this overwhelming situation. After I handed my attorney the divorce papers, I felt like I had to wrap up everything else in my life as well. I went back to my job at the gym and asked my boss for my final paycheck. I guess he could sense that I was planning a big change because he told me that the gym had other locations and I could transfer if I wanted to. Grateful for an out, I decided to move to one of our gym's out-of-state locations. Before I left, I also changed my cell phone number to start fresh and avoid any unwanted contacts from my past. Just about 5 days after I moved, I found out I was pregnant. This news hit me hard because I had been on a birth control shot that was supposed to last for 3 months. I was overwhelmed by this unexpected turn, and I braced myself for the possibility of a miscarriage due to the stress and upheaval in my life. I decided to keep the pregnancy to myself for the time being. Then, out of the blue, my attorney reached out. He emailed me a copy of my finalized divorce documents and shared some shocking news. My parents had come to see him. According to what he was told, my cousin had lied about being pregnant. My ex had left her, and now, seemingly with everything falling apart on their end, they wanted to talk to me. Despite their efforts, I chose to maintain no contact. My priority shifted entirely to setting up a stable life for myself and the baby. I managed to get a 2-bedroom apartment and started to rebuild from scratch. It's been a process, but I'm putting together a new life for myself and my soon-to-be-born child, focusing solely on our well-being. Meanwhile, life goes on around me. My best friend is getting married in a few weeks, and I'm looking forward to celebrating something positive with someone close to me. This new chapter, though unexpected, is a chance for me to create a peaceful and loving environment for my baby away from the chaos of the past. So, my friend from the church where we both grew up, she's getting married soon and wants me to be her maid of honor. That's usually a big honor, right? But there's a problem. I really don't want to bump into my parents or my ex's family at the wedding because things between us are super complicated and honestly pretty tense. Understanding my worries, my friend came up with a plan. She offered to pay for extra security at the wedding to make sure I feel safe. She also said that I wouldn't have to hang around for the whole event. I just need to be there for a part called the veil ceremony where I'd stand next to her for a bit and then I can leave right before the rehearsal dinner starts. Now, here's another twist. I'm currently 7 months pregnant. I haven't talked to my ex or my parents about the baby because, well, we're not exactly on speaking terms. It's been tough because, on one hand, I really want to support my friend on her big day, but on the other hand, I'm trying to keep my distance from them to avoid drama. My boyfriend sent me a video recently that made things even more complicated. My ex and my grandma showed up at my boyfriend's parents' house. Why? Because my boyfriend is back home until his sister's wedding and my family thought I might be there too. They were caught on security cameras talking outside. My grandma was looking for me, saying they needed to make things right with the family. My boyfriend's mom explained to her that she hadn't seen me and even suggested that my grandma could come inside and look around if she didn't believe her. She also mentioned that I had left my apartment and was out of money, which was her way of trying to throw them off my trail. So now I'm stuck deciding whether to go to this wedding or not. I want to be there for my friend who's been so supportive, but I also need to protect my own peace and prepare for the baby. It's a lot to juggle and I'm really torn about what to do. My grandma showed up at my boyfriend's parents' place looking for me. She talked to my boyfriend's mom, trying to figure out if I had been there. My boyfriend's mom told her I never stayed there but mentioned that my ex-fiancé had also come looking for me before grandma did. Then grandma dropped a big bombshell. She admitted to pushing my dad to kick me out and to file for divorce. She thought it was the best thing for our family at the time because my cousin, who lied about being pregnant, had stirred up so much trouble. Grandma said that I need to set myself aside and support the family right now. Honestly, this made me feel pretty used. It seems like my family just wants me around when it's convenient for them, not really caring about what I need or how I feel. But here's some good news on my side. I'm doing okay with the baby stuff. I have everything I need for when the baby arrives. I've also applied for family leave at work, and I got approved for 12 months off. That means I can work right up until the baby is born and then I'll have a whole year to focus on being a new mom. Regarding daycare, most places won't take a baby until they're at least 3 months old, but that's okay. I'm ready to handle things on my own for a while. It's all pretty new and a bit scary, but I'm feeling confident that I can manage it. Update: so after I decided that I needed some space from my family because things were getting too intense, to make sure I had my peace, I went as far as deleting all my social media accounts. The only way I kept in touch with anyone was through an old email account, which I only used to talk to my best friend. Out of nowhere, today I got several emails that really threw me off. The first one was from my best friend, giving me a heads up that the police had come to see her looking for me, and she ended up giving them my email address. Then I got another email, but this time directly from the police. They were asking me to come to the station in person. They said they needed to ask me some questions just to make sure I was safe and okay. It sounded serious, but it also made me pretty nervous about what was going on. The last email was from my family. The police ended up giving my email to them too. This was exactly what I was trying to avoid by keeping my distance and not sharing my new contact info. It felt like a big step backward in trying to maintain my privacy. I really don't want to start all over by moving and hiding my email again. It's been tough enough already. I'm not sure if anyone else has had to deal with something like this, but it's definitely stressful. Even though I've made it clear to everyone that I needed a break from my family, it seems like the message hasn't quite gotten through. The police sharing my email with them has only made things more complicated. Now, I'm worried about what might happen if I give out any more information about myself. To top it all off, my family even showed up at the police station while my attorney was there. My dad did most of the talking, trying to explain to my attorney right in front of the police how concerned they were and describing me as a very kind person. This was probably their way of trying to pull on my heartstrings, but it just ended up making the whole situation feel even heavier. So there's a lady who used to be really involved with her family, helping out a lot, especially with her grandma, but things took a turn after her divorce. Since then she stopped talking to anyone in her family. The family now realizes they made a big mistake by pushing her toward the divorce. They're really worried about her thinking she might be so upset that she could harm herself. They admitted they messed up and want her to come back. However, her attorney made it clear that she left because she was in a stressful and aggressive situation.
She's decided to cut off all contact, and her attorney has told the family to respect her decision and leave her alone. Despite this, her mom is confused and upset, saying this behavior isn't like her at all and wondering what they are supposed to say to her ex. Meanwhile, the police have gotten involved. They've insisted that she needs to be seen in person by an officer to make sure she's okay, so she's planning to visit a random police station after work to handle this requirement to add another layer to the drama. She got a call from her private investigator this morning. She had hired him for protection during her divorce, which is now finalized. However, the investigator had continued digging into why her family was so protective of her ex-husband. Shockingly, he discovered that the man she grew up thinking was her dad isn't her biological father. Her real dad died in a jet ski accident when she was just 8 months old. This revelation adds a whole new dimension to her family dynamics and the tensions she's experiencing. It explains some of the complicated feelings and perhaps some of the family's actions, as they might be feeling guilty or confused about their past decisions. This story highlights the emotional turmoil and the tangled web of relationships and secrets that can exist within families. So there was this big revelation about the house I grew up in. It turns out it doesn't actually belong to my mom like I thought. Instead, it's part of a trust, which is kind of like a special savings account but for property and other big stuff. This trust is actually in my name, and my dad's mom, my grandma, is the one who takes care of it. They call her the executor. Every month my mom had to pay a little bit of rent, just $1,200 to this trust. In return, the trust was giving her $1,200 every month to help take care of me, kind of like child support payments. These payments were supposed to keep going until I turned 28 or moved out of the house. I moved out a while ago, but here's the kicker: my mom never told my grandma that I did. When I found out about all this, I called my grandma and she was really upset, just crying a lot. She told me that my mom had kept a lot of things from me about my dad because she didn't want to upset me when I was younger. My mom would send my grandma pictures of me growing up but wouldn't let her visit me. My grandma thought I might not want to talk to her if I found out about all this stuff going on. Now my grandma and I are planning to meet for lunch tomorrow. She's even traveling to my city to see me. She mentioned she's bringing baby pictures of me with my dad, which I've never seen before. This has all made me feel really upset and kind of betrayed by my mom.
I haven't lived in that house for years, and knowing all this, I'm wondering if I should ask my grandma to make my mom move out of the house. It feels like a big decision. When I met my grandma, she was super sweet and I tried to learn more about her. And my dad, I was careful though, because I didn't want her to think I was just interested in the money or the trust. One genuinely want to connect and understand more about where I come from and about my dad, who I never got to know. So things have been super confusing with all the family and trust fund stuff. Basically, I've been finding out a lot more than I ever knew about my family situation. My grandma, who's actually in charge of this trust fund, which is kind of like a big pot of money and stuff, meant For me and I decided we need to sort things out. First off, we decided that my mom, my stepdad, and the woman I thought was my grandma, but isn't really related to us, need to find a new place to live. We're giving them a 30-day notice to move out and they won't be getting any more money from the trust fund. My real grandma told me that this trust fund is actually for me to use as needed, which was a big surprise. Grandma has also decided to stick around after my baby is born. She's really thinking ahead, because she suggested talking to a real estate agent to look for a new house for me in my area. She's not pushing me or anything, but she thinks it would be great if I could live in a bigger house, like one with 3 or 4 bedrooms. This way my baby could have a nice yard to play in. Plus, she mentioned that the house would be put in my name, sort of like a big gift from the trust fund. This is partly because I didn't really get birthday gifts over the years, and there's something in the trust fund rules that says I should have gotten these, so it's like making up for those missed gifts with something really big and lasting. It's a lot to take in, but having my grandma here to help me figure this out and plan for the future makes it a bit less overwhelming. We're working together to make sure everything is set up right for me and the new baby. Update 2: I recently became a mom to a beautiful baby boy who was born just a week ago. He's absolutely precious, but he was born with some health challenges that require medical attention. Thankfully, the doctors are optimistic about his future. They've told me that, despite needing several surgeries within his first year, he is expected to grow up healthy and live a normal life. While this is comforting, it also introduces some difficulties, particularly financial ones, because medical care and surgeries can be very expensive. Dealing with these expenses has put me in a tough situation. I realized that I'd need some financial support to manage all of his medical costs effectively. Therefore, I decided to seek child support from my ex-husband to do this. I hired a lawyer and provided him with all the evidence I could gather, including messages and notes left by my ex. My lawyer seems pretty confident about my case. He thinks I have a solid chance of being granted full custody, which is important because our son's doctor emphasized that my feeding him directly is critical for his health right now. My son struggles a bit with swallowing his formula, which complicates things further. This whole situation is really overwhelming for me. On top of all this, my lawyer mentioned that my ex might request to see our son. He advised that, since our son is very susceptible to illnesses, any visits should be very limited. Ideally, if visits are necessary, they should only be with his dad to reduce the risk of exposure. The thought of coordinating this and potentially having to interact more with my ex, which includes giving him my phone number, makes me really nervous. I understand that it's necessary to co-parent to some extent for my son's benefit, and I know we'll probably end up in court over these issues. It's just really hard because I've lost trust in my ex over past events. I'm feeling quite lost about what to do next, and any advice would be welcome. My lawyer has prepared all the necessary documents and plans to send them off tomorrow. Meanwhile, my grandmother, who had been helping out, needed to return to our home state, but she plans to come back in 3 weeks. Regarding my ex's involvement, I'm unsure when he plans to visit. If he decides to come soon, he'll find us still in the hospital. The medical team is planning to send us home with an oxygen monitor to help manage my son's condition after we leave the hospital. If he visits after we're home, I'll ask my lawyer to arrange a meeting in a controlled environment like the lawyer's conference room to avoid public spaces where my son could catch germs. I'm also worried about how my ex will react when he learns about everything that's happened recently. My thoughts are all over the place. To complicate matters, my ex has legally acknowledged paternity without needing a DNA test, which simplifies one aspect of our situation. Despite preparing for the possibility of his visit, his actual arrival made me quite anxious. He arrived unexpectedly just after midnight, and I had to go down to meet him, which felt incredibly awkward. He looked exhausted and upset during the visit. There were tense moments, but also emotional ones, especially as he interacted with our son in the hospital. I captured these moments in photographs for a baby book, hoping to preserve some memories of their interaction. After the visit, my ex was very focused on his phone, managing calls from his family, showing a different side of him that I wasn't used to seeing. After this draining day, he expressed a desire to discuss our relationship and possibly reconcile, but I was too exhausted and needed rest. I left him in the waiting area and returned to my room to sleep. Later, I found him asleep in the waiting room, still present, possibly waiting for another chance to talk or see our son. It's all quite overwhelming, and I'm trying to navigate this complex situation as best as I can, considering both my well-being and the health and safety of our son. What steps should I take next? What do you think? Last update. So, I was at the hospital all day because that's where my baby and I needed to be. My ex-boyfriend, who hasn't been the best partner, was there too. Now here's where things get even more wild. His family was making a lot of fuss. His grandma got really upset about a video I shared online that announced the birth of our baby boy. In the video, I mentioned our baby's name, which didn't start with Z. Now in his family, it's a big deal because traditionally the oldest son's name starts with a Z, and Grandma was not happy about it. She even said something super dramatic like, "I'm fit to be tied in 8 generations," which is just a fancy way of saying she was really, really mad. She insisted we needed to change the baby's name immediately. My ex, probably feeling all the pressure, kept trying to have a serious talk with me about us and getting back together. I made it clear to him that there isn't an us anymore. We're just going to be co-parents. That means we're just going to work together to take care of our baby, but we're not going to be together as a couple. He even suggested that we should go to counseling, but I didn't respond to that idea because I was busy taking care of our son, who was a bit upset and needed to be fed. After I fed the baby and wrapped him up snug like a burrito. A way of swaddling that makes babies feel safe and snug. Things calmed down a bit, however, because it was a super busy day at the NICU. That's the part of the hospital where they take care of babies who need a little extra help right after they're born, and the nurses were about to change shifts. They asked my ex to leave the hospital. He had just left when the doctors came in to check on my little guy. They checked his health and everything, and since I had already completed all the parent education classes they wanted me to take, they decided it was okay for us to go home soon. This is a big step because it means my baby is doing well enough to leave the hospital. I just needed a little bit of time to get ready, so I called a friend to come and pick us up. That's basically how my day went. It was pretty hectic with a lot going on, especially with the drama about the baby's name and my ex trying to talk about getting back together. But in the end, I was just focused on getting everything ready for my baby to come home from the hospital. After my baby boy was cleared to leave the hospital, I packed up all our stuff from the hospital room. I brought his cute little going home outfit and his car seat to make sure he'd be comfy and safe on the ride home. Before we left, I snapped a few pictures of him, looking all adorable in his outfit and strapped into his car seat. I sent these photos to my ex, the one who hasn't been very trustworthy lately, just to keep him updated. I also let him know that he shouldn't come to the hospital the next day, since we were already discharged that evening. My ex texted back, wanting to know when he could see our baby next. I told him I'd check with my lawyer to figure out a good time for a visit and get back to him after the baby and I had some rest because, honestly, I was exhausted. Then he sent a message that caught me off guard. He said, "You know I love you, right? Not just because of little man. I love you for you." I screwed up. I didn't reply to that message right away. Instead, I decided to come here and write it all out first, just to sort through my thoughts. Now, adding to the drama, I had posted a pregnancy announcement video on our church's social media page. This stirred up some more trouble. My cousin's mom, who I jokingly call fake aunt, messaged me privately. She was upset because the video made it hard for her daughter, who had also been hurt by a cheating partner, to feel comfortable coming to church. She told me that the video was affecting her daughter's life and asked me to take it down. As if that wasn't enough for one day, my ex showed up and we had a meeting. He asked me again if we could go to counseling together to try to fix our relationship. I had to be clear with him that there was no us to work on. His response was that even if we weren't going to get back together, I should at least help him find closure. I acted a bit confused and said I didn't really understand what he meant by that when my ex started talking about wanting to fix things between us. I reminded him that I was just doing what he did to me months ago. I wasn't going to talk about our problems. I was just going to move on. I wasn't trying to be mean, just stating it as a fact. He didn't say anything for a while after that, and we shifted our focus back to our baby, discussing his upcoming doctor's appointments. Then, out of the blue, during our conversation, a FaceTime call came in from my ex's mother. He picked it up and showed her our little man, who had an oxygen monitor taped to his foot. She was all happy seeing the baby, but then started questioning why her son wasn't staying at my apartment. She even went as far as to tell me that I needed to be more forgiving, suggesting that by not letting my ex stay with me, I was being unchristian. Well, I wasn't having any of that. I calmly told her that my home is like my temple and that she should remember the story from the Bible, specifically John 2 verses 13 to 16, where Christ drives the merchants out of the temple with a whip because they were disrespecting it. Basically, I was saying that just like Christ, I wasn't going to let someone who disrespected my home just come back like nothing happened. This caught everyone off guard. My ex's dad started laughing uncontrollably because he found my comeback pretty clever. He even said he'd use that line next time someone called him unchristian. After that, he turned more serious and actually apologized for everything that was happening. He sounded sincere this time. He even asked what the baby and I needed, showing he cared about our well-being. He then shared a bit about my ex's current living situation in Texas, giving me some more context about what was going on with him. So, there was another big discussion about my baby, his health, and how everyone fits into his life. My ex's dad was on the call too, and I took the opportunity to show him our little boy again. I explained that because of the baby's upcoming surgery, having lots of people around like traveling guests wouldn't be good for him. It's important that everything stays calm and controlled to keep him healthy. My father-in-law understood where I was coming from and even agreed that he would have made the same choice if he were in my shoes. He was really supportive and even offered to arrange for someone to come and give our baby a blessing before his surgery. I told him I'd think about it. It's a big decision and I want to be sure it's the right move before anything happens. After that conversation, I let my ex know that he could see our little boy at the next doctor's appointment, but not this weekend. I just needed some time to myself, because I'm feeling both physically and emotionally exhausted. Walking around is painful, and I stopped taking my pain meds because I didn't want them to interfere with my baby's own medications or affect my ability to take care of him. My ex didn't take this news well. I could tell he was upset, even though he just said okay. To keep everything clear and above board, I recorded the whole conversation. I'm a bit worried about how refusing the visit this weekend might impact things later, especially since he's been trying to get back together with me. He's been messaging me non-stop on the parenting app we use, trying to reconcile. Here's a bit more background that adds to the complexity. When my ex found out my cousin wasn't pregnant, he actually went to my divorce attorney wanting to get back together with me. But by that time, I was really hurt and just couldn't go back to how things were. So, I said no, and we've been stuck in this tough situation ever since. So what should I do? Should I give him a chance? He's the father of my child. I'm going to turn this one over to you. What do you make of this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, support, and time mean the world to me. So, thank you so much for being part of this. I really appreciate your time. I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.